Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Well, peace and power elevation. Yeah, peace be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany coming through here, live in effect. Obviously, I don't know what's going on with my video. It's not showing up. But anywho, tonight's subject, I am going to get into the interesting topic about neuroscience. So I want to talk about the neuroscience, focus on the study about the brain structures in the male and the females. So as far as like how our brain is structured together and how our brain function, etc. Peace, brother Umi. Thank you for coming through. Now, I think this is a very, very important topic. One, the most important topic, because this is where we have to be able to understand about behavioral science and cognitive science along with neuroscience. We have to be able to understand how why men function the way they do, why women function the way they do, and um and does the brain factor make a lot of difference in our behavior. So this article here, what I'm about to pull up and show you guys, all right. So this article here gives a good question around what is the brain activity. Does the brain activity is it based on the concept of behavior differences or sex differences? So, and then also I got some more information to back this up, but I want to go ahead and get to this article. So this article came out today on psychopost.org. All right. So Psypost is psychology post. So, but this is one pretty much a reliable source, a reliable website to find out a lot of information about psychology, neuroscience, cognitive science, anything in that field. Just something that you guys can expose yourself to. Yeah. But anyways, I want to go ahead and get into this. So the title of this subject is called "The Neuroscience Research Finds Brain Structure Differences in Men and Women Are Not Strongly Linked to Behavioral Differences." All right, and this is written by Eric W. Dolan on November the 1st of 2021. All right, so here it starts off saying brain structure differences in men and women are only weakly linked to behavior differences, according to new research that analyzed two large independent brain imaging data sets. The findings have been published in the journal Psychological Science. All right, so you can go on Psychological Science. That's where this publishing came from. Okay. And it says the presence of sex differences in humans' behavior is well documented, but whether these behavior differences are related to differences in males and females' brain structure has been unclear. Previous research has indicated that sex differences in brain structure are in fact related to sex differences in behavior. Previous research has indicated sex differences in brain structure are in fact related to sex differences in behavior, but the new findings provide evidence that this relationship is mostly driven by brain size. And goes on to say, my background in neuropsychology and neuroimaging made me interested in this topic, i.e., whether sex differences in the brain are related to sex differences in behavior, explains study author Lisa Van Echek, a psychology lecturer at James Cook University. All right, so I want to show this article real fast. So the article where this information comes from, because I always want to make sure I take you guys to the primary sources. All right, so this is the primary source right here. So it says, are sex differences in human brain structure associated with sex differences in behavior? Now, with this article, in order to get access to it, you have to pay for it, okay? But down here it says abstract. On average, men and women differ in brain structure and behavior, raising the possibility of a link between sex differences in brains and behavior. But women and men are also subject to different societal and cultural norms. We navigate this challenge by investigating variability of sex differentiated brain structure within each sex, using data from Queensland Twin Imagining Imaging Study and Human Connectome Project. We obtain data-driven measure of of individual differences along a male and female dimension for brain and behavior based on average sex differences in brain structure and behavior, respectively. We found a weak association between these brains and behavior differences driven by brain size. These brain and behavior differences were moderately heritable. Our findings suggest that behavioral sex differences are to some extent related to sex differences in brain structures, but that this is mainly driven by differences in brain size and casualty should be interpreted cautiously. So in their argument, they think that the the behavior differences is not based on so much of the sex differences or the sexual or the sex behavior of the male or female, but more so of the brain size. Because technically speaking, men brains are 9 times larger than women. So men brains are bigger than women, naturally speaking. So that's where we had to go into the concept about sexual dimorphism, which I have a Wikipedia source on that I want to show. Then I want to get back to the article. So right here, according to the Wikipedia article, this is dealing with sexual dimorphism. What is sexual dimorphism? So sexual dimorphism is the condition where the sexes of the same species exhibit different characteristics, particularly characteristics not directly involved in reproduction. The condition occurs in most animals and some plants. Differences may include secondary sex characteristics, size, weight, color, markings, or behavioral or cognitive traits. These differences may be subtle or exaggerated and may be subject to sexual selection and natural selection. The opposite of dimorphism is monomorphism, which is when both biological sexes are phenotypically indistinguishable from each other. Okay. So now let's go down to the concept about the primates. So we are considered as part of the primates. All right. So under here it says human. So I want to skip down to where it talks about the brain function. All right, so down here it says, in the human brain, a difference between sexes was observed in the transcription of the PCDH11S/Y gene pair unique to Homo sapien. Sexual differentiation in the human brain from the undifferentiated state is triggered by testosterone from the fetal testes. The testosterone is converted to estrogen in the brain through the action of the enzyme aromatase. Testosterone acts on many brain's area, including the SDNPOA, to create the masculinized brain pattern. Brains of pregnant female carrying male fetuses may be shielded from the masculizing effects of androgen through the action of sex hormone binding globulin. All right, and then it goes on to talk about the relationship between sex differences in the brain and human behavior is a subject of controversy in psychology and society at large. Many females tend to have a larger a higher ratio of gray matter in the left hemisphere of the brain in comparison to male. Now, what do they mean by gray matter? So the gray matter is a component of the central nervous system consisting of neuronal cells, bodies, neuropil, uh, glial cells, synapses, and capillaries. Gray matter is distinguished from white matter in that it contains numerous cells, bodies, and relatively few myelinate exons, while white matter contains relatively few cells, bodies, and is composed chiefly of long-range myelinated exons. So basically, so the gray matter is, let's see if I can pull up this diagram right here. All right, so this is the gray matter, and that's the white matter. So that's the main part of the central nervous system. Okay, all right. But anyways, it says many females tend to have a higher ratio of gray matter in the left hemisphere of the brain in comparison to male. Male on average have larger brains than females. However, when adjusted for total brain volume, the gray matter differences between sexes is almost non-existent. Thus, the percentage of gray matter appears to be more related to the brain size than it is to sex. So, stop right there. It says the percentage of gray matter appears to be more related to brain size than it is to sex. So now let's go back to the article, the original article. Now, going down here, it says sex differences has been found for behavior. For example, on average, better visual spatial skills for males than female, and vice versa. On average, better empathy skills found for females than males. Sex differences have also been found for disease and mental disorders, such as higher prevalence for autism spectrum disorder in male versus female, and vice versa, higher prevalence for depression in females versus male. In addition, several sex differences have been found in the brain, such as the male brain are on average 10 to 15% larger than the female brains. The question that remained was whether sex differences in behavior could be related to sex differences in the brain. And if so, this relationship could provide insights for disorder that has shown sex differences. So again, so it's the study of about, well, based on the brain structure, could it help better explain the sex differences between the males and females? So this is where the assessment comes in. All right, it says the researcher used data from the Human Connectome Project and Queensland Twin Imaging Study to examine individual differences in male and female's brain structure. Both Human Connectome Project and Queensland Twin Imaging Study use high-quality imaging technology to measure the brain structure. It says the studies also collected a variety of physical, neurocognitive, and behavioral data from participants, including, but not limited to, body mass index, intelligence, working memory, performance, personality traits, psychiatric system. The combined sample including data from 2,153 adults. So I'm not going to really go into all of this, but you know what? There's something interesting in this article that really caught my attention. It said to eliminate societal and cultural factors that could influence sex differences in behavior, Van Ejek and her colleagues examined brain differences amongst individuals of the same sex. In other words, they separately compare women to other women and compare men to other men. Considering that women and men are subject to differential societal and cultural norms, we examine individual differences in brain structure along a male-female dimension separately for each sex. All right. So I'm just going to leave this article right here, and I got something that will help better explain this article. All right. So I have a book. I have two books actually that is written by I have a book that's written by a lady named Luanne Brisendine. So let me go ahead and pull this information up. All right, so she written two books. She written multiple books, but I only have two of them. So this one is dealing with the female brain. So yeah, this is the female brain, Luanne Brisendine. All right. Trying to figure out what year she wrote this. I believe she wrote this back in 2013. But let's go ahead. Let's go into the introduction. This one says, what makes us women? So it says more than 99% of male and female genetic coding is exactly the same. Out of the 30,000 genes in the human genome, the less than 1% variation between the sexes is small, but the percentage differences influence every single sex in our bodies, from the nerves that register pleasure and pain to the neurons that transmit perception, thoughts, feelings, and emotion. To the observant eye, the brains of females and male are not the same. Male brains are larger by 9%, even after correcting for body size. In the 19th century, scientists took this to mean that women had less mental capacity than men. Men and women, however, have the same number of brain cells. The cells are just packed more densely in women, cinched corset-like into a smaller skull. All right, so I'm glad she put that out there. So people at one point in time thought because of the brain size of the female and the male that it's supposed to determine the level of intelligence, and that's not necessarily true. It doesn't determine those level of intelligence based on the size. It just means that it's just more space in the male's brain, meaning that the male has more, a lot more space in his brain than the female does, but that doesn't determine the intellectual ability, because as she mentioned, the number of brain cells are the same. It's just that it's more condensed in the females. So it just make it, it just look like the brain is much smaller, in which it is, but it's just because that the brain cells is more condensed. However, the IQ level is not, it shouldn't be determined by that, and it's not determined. So you got women that might be good in subjects areas that men are not good in. As far as intellectual, you got men that might be good in science and women that's good in math, or vice versa. But let me go ahead and continue. So that's one key. She also mentioned down here, so she has her own clinic where she particularly deals with women that have mood swings and hormonal issues, etc. So right down here, she put, in all menstruating women, the female brain changes a little every day. Some parts of the brain change up to 25% every month, which that's interesting. Things get rocky at times, but for most women, the changes are manageable. I never knew that. See, I never knew that the brain cells of a female changes during her menstrual cycle. I never knew that. So as far as Yeah, I didn't know that. So I didn't know that the menstrual cycle had that type of effect on the woman's brain. I know it has effect on the hormones, but I didn't know that it can affect the brain as far as causing it to change up to 25%. Um, but that's just very interesting. This is just based on her studies. So go down here. She said, I found it. So in 1994, I founded the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of California, San Francisco. It was one of the first clinics in the country dedicated to looking at women's brain states and how neurochemistry and hormones affect their moods. What we found is that the female brain is so deeply affected by hormones that their influences can be said to create a woman's reality. They can shape a woman's value and desire and tell her day to day what's important. Their presence is felt at every stage of life, right from birth. Each hormone state, girlhood, the adolescent years, the dating years, motherhood, and menopause, acts as a fertilizer for different neurological connections that are responsible for new thoughts, emotion, and interests. Because of the fluctuations that begin as early as 3 months old and last until after menopause, a woman's neurological reality is not as constant as a man. So that means there's constant changes going on throughout our period of life, because not just the fact that it involves with our menstruation and um, our ovulation process and menopause, but it's just how our brain is developed. So there is some changes that takes place, so it's not always a constant thing. So that's why if you ever wonder, well, why are women so indecisive all the time, why they say this and say that, because there's a constant change in the brain. It's that part of the brain that controls our thoughts and our feelings, our emotion about certain things. So it's not, so our thoughts will not always be very consistent like a male. um So going down here, it says new brain science has rapidly transformed our view of basic neurological differences between men and women. Earlier, scientists could investigate these differences only by studying the brains of cadavers or the symptoms of individuals with brain damage. But thanks to advances in genetics and non-invasive brain imaging technology, there's been a complete revolution in neuroscientific research and theory. New tools such as positron emission tomography and functional magnetic resonance imaging scans now allows us to see inside the human brain in real time while it's solving problems, producing words, retrieving memories, noticing facial expression, establishing trust, falling in love, listening to babies cry, and feeling depression, fear, and anxiety. All right, so this is all I just want to share with you guys. But if you guys ever want to learn more about the brain function of women, you should check out this book. Now let's go to the one about the let's go to the one about the male brain function. So it's written by the same author. And like I said, this is very intriguing that she has done her studies on these particular subject. Okay, so now let's go down to the introduction. Say what makes a man. All right. So I'm trying to find where I can start. All right, so right here, it says male and female brains are different from the moment of conception. It seems obvious to say that all the cells in a man's brain and body are male. Yet this means that there are deep differences at the level of every cell between the male and female brain. A male cell has a Y chromosome and the female does not. That small but significant differences begin to play out early in the brain as genes set the stage for later amplification by hormones. By 8 weeks after conception, the tiny male testicles begin to produce enough testosterone to marinate the brain and fundamentally alter its structure. Over the course of a man's life, the brain will be formed and reformed according to a blueprint drafted both by genes and male sex hormones. And this male brain biology produces distinctively male behaviors. So the male brain draws on my 25 years of clinical experience as neuropsychiatrist. So the lady is a neuropsychiatrist. It presents research findings from the advances over the past decade in our understanding of developmental neuroendocrinology. So the endocrine system deals with the testicles and the ovaries, the hormones. All right, basically. Now, going down, it says in the female brain, the hormones estrogen, progesterone, and oxytocin predispose brain circuits towards female typical behaviors. In the male brain, it's testosterone, vasopressin, and a hormone called MIS, Merlin inhibiting substance that have the earliest and most enduring effects. The behavioral influences of male and female's hormones on the brain are major. We have learned that men use different brain circuits to process spatial information and solve emotional problems. Their brain circuits and nervous system are wired to their muscle differently, especially in the face. The female and male brains hear, see, into, and gauge what others are feeling in their own special way. Overall, the brain circuits in male and female brains are very similar, but men and women can arrive at and accomplish the same goals and tasks using different circuits. It says we also know that men have 2.5 times the brain space devoted to sexual drive in their hypothalamus. Sexual thoughts flicker in the background of a man's visual cortex all day and night, making him always at the ready for a seasoned sexual opportunity. Women don't always realize that the penis has a mind of its own. That's funny. For neurological reasons. And mating is as important to men as it is to women. Once a man's love and lust circuits are in sync, he falls just as head over heels in love as a woman, perhaps even more so. When a baby is on the way, the male brains change it in specific and dramatic ways to form the daddy's brain. Men also have larger brain centers for muscular action and aggression. His brain circuits for mate protection and territorial defense are hormonally primed for action starting at puberty. Pecking order and hierarchy matter more deeply to men than most women realize. Men also have larger processors in the core of the most primitive area of the brain, which registers fear and triggers protective aggression. The amygdala. This is why some men will fight to death defending their loved ones. What's more, when faced with a loved one's emotions, destroys his brain area for problem solving and fixing the situation will immediately spark. All right, so again, I'm not going to go any further in the book, so it's a lot of information, but again, this is the name of it, the male brain. And I will also play the video that kind of just better help explain more into this. But I just want you guys to check out these two books and have them in your archives if you need to. So, The Male Brain and the Female Brain by Luanne Brisendine. All right. Hey Vinyasa, how you doing? How you doing? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play a little bit of video clip that I was watching earlier from on this subject. So I'm not going to play all of it. I'm just gonna play to probably like 5 or 10 minutes of it. Okay. So right here, the name of the subject is called The Scientific Differences Between Female and Male Brain. And this is the lady right here, over here to the right with the red hair. She was the one that wrote the book. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start from the beginning.
All of them.
Welcome to the science. Even when you're really busy. Email subscribers have been raving about this guide. You can get all of that, and including free guides, actionable.
Okay, hold on.
We shared strategies for enhancing and harmonizing with your brain's dopamine circuitry
and much more in our previous interview with Dr. Daniel Z. Lieberman. If you want to finally break free from the cycle of chasing your tail, listen to that episode. Now, for our interview with Dr. Brisendine. Today, we have another unique guest on the show, Dr. Luanne Brisendine. Dr. Brisendine is the founder of the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic and a neuropsychiatrist at UCSF. She's the author of the New York Times bestselling books, The Female Brain and The Male Brain, and the executive producer of the 2017 movie, The Female Brain. She has served as faculty at both Harvard and UCSF, and her work has been featured in the Harvard Business Review, The Guardian, and much more. Dr. Brisendine, welcome to The Science of Success.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're very excited to have you on the show today and to really explore some of the topics that you've researched and written and spoken about. Before we get into kind of the meat of your work, I'd love to start with something that we were hashing out and just started to have a really interesting conversation about in the pre-show that I think is really relevant for the listeners. And this is the idea of science as a decision-making framework. How do you think about how we integrate and use scientific knowledge to make better decisions?
Well, I think one of the things that when you're in the scientific world, you're so cognizant of the fact that everything that we know today, you can ask me a question today, what as of today do I know to be true? And I can only tell you what I know to be true today, but I can also tell you about more things so that, maybe 5 years from now, we'll have some different answers. So it's always this issue of sort of hedging your bets, even about what you know to be true today. But in science, it's confusing to the public because we always hedging bets. I also do know 3 or 4 things that are kind of lurking in our peripheral vision that may do something to change our theories a bit or change what we think is scientifically true a bit. So we're always kind of, as scientists, holding what we know is true today, but that tomorrow it may not be. For the public, it feels like, well, if something is sort of hedgy, if someone's hedging on it, an expert's hedging on it today, what can we really believe? Is science really true or is science not true? So I think that's an unfortunate conclusion that sometimes the public makes, is you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't sort of focus on something that can be actionable, some really important piece of scientific information that we know to be, say, 98% true today, that you could take in your life and make it actionable and really help yourself. So I encourage your audience to take some of the scientific truths of today for just what they are. They are the truths of today, which doesn't mean that we're not going to have modifications of them in coming years.
And what would
That's important what she said. The information is just the scientific is just the truth of today. That means that there's always new information that will become available and they'll have to be changed over a period of time. So that means that information has to be constantly upgraded. So it's not going to always remain the same because there's always new discovery. So that's very important. It's very valuable what she stated, that science is just truth of today. So science is always going to do an ongoing research. So I just wanted to say that. But let me continue with this video.
What would you say to somebody who thinks to themselves, or even has a friend or family member who says something like, well, science gets stuff wrong all the time, I'm just going to ignore it, or I'm just going to go with my gut, or I just don't believe that?
So I would just say that, of course, science gets things all wrong all the time, and they get many things wrong. A lot of things they, of course, get right. But the process and the progress of science is constantly questioning, okay, is this thing that we just showed in this experiment, okay, how true is it? And is it true in all situations? So let's do another set of 10 experiments to test that out, to see if that theory is true in other situations. So science is always constantly, the whole goal of science is to test to make sure that what we think is true really is true. So we are constantly questioning ourselves as scientists, questioning our theories. That is just part of the progress of science, but it is the heart of the scientific process itself.
You know, we're kind of getting out on a tangent a little bit, but to me, somebody like a Carl Sagan is such an intellectual hero of mine, because he really popularized and taught and shared people the power of the scientific method, and constantly questioning yourself, constantly testing your assumptions, and how that can be a very useful and impactful way to think about the world and to think about your life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that Carl Sagan is also a hero of mine because of the way of thinking about science and the scientific method. And I think this is why it's kind of important for all of us to have at least a little bit of scientific learning through different parts of school, is so that we kind of understand how scientists think. And scientists never claim to have the absolute once and for all truth about something. Scientists are always experimenting and trying to move the ball further and further down the field.
And ultimately, that questioning and that constant testing gets us to stronger answers and moves us towards a more robust understanding of what is really true.
Absolutely. And I think, especially I'm so aware of that in my field, which is looking lots at the brain connections and the brain aspects of gender differences in the brain, because the male and female brain are more alike than they are different. After all, we are the same species, right, Matt?
I think so. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. And so there's so much involved in that. And what we do know is that, from the moment of conception, when that sperm enters the egg, if the sperm is carrying an X, the baby will be female. If it's carrying a Y, the baby will be male. And so from the moment of conception onwards, we are gendered, if you will. Well, you're going to be male or female. And at 8 weeks of life, the male tiny testicles start to put out huge amounts of testosterone in the body. The brain and body into males. By the time we're all born, we're either born male or female. And that doesn't mean that we're obviously not different species, but we are a version of humanity. You end up being a male version of humanity or a female version of humanity. Most everything works just about the same, but there's a whole bunch of different things and different parts of the circuits, like the area for sexual pursuit is about 2 times larger in the male brain right from the get-go. And that's made during that fetal life and is then triggered by all of the testosterone surge at age 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, in males during male puberty. That whole system is like turned on like a light bulb. And it's important to know that that's completely the natural, normal unfolding of the male sex. That's how you guys are wired. In females, we are developed from that moment of conception until we're born without testosterone. So the absence of testosterone lets our circuits develop in the female, or the default mode. The default mode, in a way, is the female circuitry. And then, of course, during puberty, we get all of the estrogen surges and the progesterone surges, and we shape our circuitry, our behavior, our motivations are tilted in the female direction. So these things are built on those principles. So those are the principles that we understand, that we know, and those haven't changed really from our understanding from the last 50 years. That different aspects of it, of course, and new elements of how that happens, and some ways in which it can be a bit different happen, like the same-sex attraction that happens in if you're going to be same-sex attracted, that usually happens in puberty for both males and females. That unfolds in that direction. We don't understand much about how that happens for different brain circuits, but we know that all of the aspects of who we're going to be sexually attracted to happens usually at the unfolding of puberty.
So before we dig into some of the puberty effects on the brain, I want to come back to this fundamental premise and perhaps even explore a little bit or hear about your journey and your story of how you came to some of these conclusions that the male and female brain are in fact different.
Right. So I just sort of laid out how the science goes, how the biology and the unfolding of if you have a Y chromosome, you're going to develop in the male direction. If you have an X, you're going to develop in the female direction. Now, that says something about how your brain circuits and your body and your genitals, how they develop. That's just biology. I mean, that's how the biology unfolds. But I think that what happens is that many people then try to take that into other realms, like, oh, does that mean girls aren't good at math and that boys are better at math? And, basically, both brains can do the same kinds of things. There's an equal number of very high IQ females as there are high IQ males. So the aspects of intelligence and the aspects of other parts of how the brain functions aren't different. The male and female brain are, like I said, they're more alike than different. After all, we are the same species. The parts that are different have to do with reproduction, and basically the means of reproduction, or the seeking out a sexual partner to reproduce. Those are made in different categories, male and female. So that's kind of how we all kind of get started in life. That doesn't necessarily mean that the only thing we are is male or female. I'm a female who happens to really like science. Matt, you may be a male who, maybe I don't know, maybe you like costumes or fabrics. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, whatever it is that you happen to be interested in doesn't necessarily only have to do with which sex you are.
So tell me more about these changes or these differences in the brain and how it impacts male and female behavior, especially around reproductive behavior.
So I think one of the things that I like to talk about, and I talked a lot about that in my book, The Female Brain, which I think I know when a lot of guys sort of read that, they say that especially chapter 2, which is the teen girl brain chapter, really explains a lot about kind of what it's like to be a teen girl in terms of looking at it from the brain perspective. And for example, as the estrogen progesterone cycles start to happen after a girl goes through puberty, all kinds of things get stimulated in her brain that are like, she gets very interested in her appearance. And I mean, you probably know both of you guys know some girls in your life that are like, they're really into dressing a certain way. They want their shoes to be a certain way, their hair, their makeup. And, I can remember myself at that age, like I would read, in those days, it was like the 17 magazine or all the girls' magazines. I wanted to know what it would be like. I wanted to look like, I wanted to be hot. I wanted to have males be attracted to me. And what was I going, how did I do that? How did I figure that out? Girls are trying to figure that out all the time, because part of their biology and their hormonal triggering of the motivation, the behavioral motivation in their brain to look hot and attract the opposite sex, if they're opposite sex attracted, is basically to spend time on their appearance, figure out what that's going to be like, how you're going to get guys to be attracted to you, is kind of the subtext of that urge and that motivation. I mean, it's almost like the hormones that trigger your hunger. These things are sort of built in biologically. We don't think that they are. We kind of think, oh, I mean, I know a lot of guys that I've talked to, they're in the teenage.
That's the video, and that's the doctor. So she explains the differences in the male and the female's brain and the behavior patterns. But she has said a lot of things that's very interesting. Now, I want to get back to the part where she was talking about in her book, where she says women don't understand that the penis have a mind of its own. Um, I find that very baffling. And the reason why I do, because I just never thought of that. I just thought the penis is just the organ that's attached to the male's body, and it just starts to, go through the erection process, or become hard when the man thinks or feels some kind of way. I thought it would just connect, but I never thought of the man or the penis having a mind of its own. Like I never thought of that, um but that is pretty interesting. So that's a great information. I think that we need to really start studying more into about the sexual dimorphism and the neurological differences in males and females to be able to better understand each other. And this kind of ties into my position where I stand on. So I do personally believe in gender roles. I do. I believe that gender roles are necessary. Why? Because you're bringing more balance when you have a gender role. Because when you study the brain activity of the male and the brain activity of the female, then you'll be able to go about bring about proper assessment of having gender roles. Now, there are certain things that I may not agree with as far as how things are culturally practiced. As far as here in America and elsewhere, there's some things I disagree with. But overall, there needs to be some type of role, because there needs to be a role that females can play, and there's a role that men could play. And what people have to understand is that men and women cannot do exactly the same thing all the time. There's certain things that we can do, but there's certain things we can't do. Certain things that men can do that women cannot, that women are incapable of doing. And certain things that women can do that men are incapable of doing. So we don't have the same physiology, all right? We don't have the same muscle mass or muscular mass. We don't have the same muscular mass. We don't have the same reproductive system. Okay, so as a woman, there's some type of work that you don't need to get involved doing. Like, I don't think women should be doing forklifting. That's just me. I don't think women should be doing that. That should be more permissible for a man. Because why? Because let's just say in the case if a woman becomes pregnant, she can't get on that forklifting machine, because if she get on that machine and she's pregnant, she can possibly have a miscarriage. Just like I don't agree that women should be doing construction work. That's something that should be more of a male's work, male-dominated work. Why? Because, again, the physiology of the female, and etc. And it's a lot of stuff. So I think some women can get away with doing certain things, but everything is not. It's not meant for. Everything is not meant for just the same sex. But then also you have differences in women's behavior and men behavior amongst themselves. So you have certain men that carry on feminine traits, and you have certain men that are just very masculine about themselves. But what they both have in common, they both still men. You know what I mean? They both still men. They both still gonna have some type of biological trait that's gonna keep them function as men. Same way with the females. Uh, Some women carry on masculine traits. Some women are very feminine. But what they both have in common, they both are still women. And nothing changes about that. And then also how we adapt to our environment. That makes a whole lot of difference. men are better at surviving than women. When I say when it comes to survival, mean that men have they're better at going out hustling. They're better at fighting, protecting themselves. They're very territorial than women. So women, they are territorial too, especially when it comes to their young ones, their children, but they don't have that defense mechanism as a man. So if women are going to be taught how to bring about self-defense, they need to be around males, because most women, an average woman don't know how to properly defend herself physically. An average woman don't know how to properly defend herself. Now, verbally, she know how to defend herself, but physically, most of them don't, because they don't have that technique, the skill training. So it's going to take a lot for a woman to be able to develop that skill naturally. Whereas men, they have that natural skill setting of being able to properly defend themselves. It comes natural to them. For women, it's something that it takes a lot of work to develop. So, but it's necessary. I mean, both tools are necessary. Women needs to learn survival skills, and they need to learn to defend themselves. Our ancestor had to do it, so there should be no excuse why they shouldn't. But at the same time, it's something that's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of development for a woman to be able to get into the habit of doing. Whereas men, it's something that's going to come natural. But yeah, again, the gender roles are necessary. So people that sit here and say that, well, gender roles ain't nothing more than social construct, yes, but at the same time, it's there for a reason. Even if you want to talk about the same sex relationship or whatever, they practice some form of gender role. You can't tell me that one of the couple is not doing things that will be more masculine than the other, or you can't tell me that this person ain't doing something that's more feminine than what the other person is doing. So somebody's going to play a role. Somebody's going to practice a gender role regardless. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So you might as well just get over the concept that gender role are not necessary. It's a social construct. You need to get rid of it, etc. It's not going to happen. It's necessary. It needs to be there. It needs to be a part of our culture, because that's how you have the balance between males and females. Because if everybody was doing the same thing, then it will be unbalanced. It will be some problems. So you gotta have you gotta have that. You have to be able to bring those equal balance. So you got to have the male doing certain stuff, and you have to have women doing certain stuff. And also what the lady mentioned in the video about how females, when we come to a certain age, we start to view our body. We start paying attention more. We start to try to dress a way that is more appealing. And we say, a lot of times we say that, well, we're doing it for ourselves, but technically we're not. We're doing it for the opposite sex, or for the same sex, but in this case, the opposite sex. We're doing it to attract attention, draw attention on ourselves. That's what we're doing. We're doing that. So when we start to wear certain clothing and put on certain type of makeup and wear our hair a certain way, we do it to draw attention. We do that because we're looking at validation. And if any woman saying that, nah, she ain't doing it, she's telling a lie. You are really doing it. Yeah, you might want to build confidence within you, but at the same time, you're doing it to look for validation. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. You looking for attention. That's what you're looking for. And so women start to, and then on top of that, girls start to be a little bit more curious about sex. They tend to gravitate to guys that might be a little bit older than them for some type of attention and affection. Because I read this a long time ago that it's true that girls mature faster than boys. And that is, for the most part, most girls mature faster than males. So, but years on down, or years on up, males start to catch up. They start catch up as far as their height. They start catch up as far as intellectually, etc. But girls tend to mature faster than males. So a lot of time, girls always thinking ahead of what they want and what they looking for. And then boys, of course, men, their testosterone, they kind of go all over the place. And when they see the women they like or somebody that looks very attractive, it's gonna like their testosterone is gonna tell them, hey, you know, you might want to go for that. You might want to try to get at that. So that's why you will see most guys be trying to get at females and be trying to get them in the bed because of their testosterone operation going on. So how it's balancing, how it's pretty much telling them, giving them instruction to go and talk to this particular woman or whatever they looking at. So again, once we get into the habit of really dealing with these conversations, having these conversations more often, I think it will be able to make a lot more sense to us, and it wouldn't be so much of this gender bias. It wouldn't be so much of the dichotomy, especially false dichotomy amongst male and females. It will be better understanding. So we'll be able to know how to be able to deal with each other and tolerate each other more, and how to be able to properly communicate with one another. Yeah, so that's where I stand on that. But anyways, that's all I have for tonight. And I really appreciate you guys for watching my video, for those of you that's watching. And if you want to share this channel, you're more than welcome to do so. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. Make sure you check out the books that I posted up. And again, if you guys want to check out this article, the title of this article here, post this article back up. It is called Neuroscience Research Finds Brain Structure Differences in Men and Women Are Not Strongly Linked to Behavioral Differences. Okay, and this is on the Psypost, PSYPOST.org. So you guys can go ahead and look that up. But anyways, I will reconnect with you all tomorrow, Tuesday. So please be on the lookout. All right. Until then, take it easy. Peace and power, elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. Deuces. All right.